Well, good evening and welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, October 23rd, 2017. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Leaks May.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Pollica.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Piana.
Here.
And Mayor Coulter.
Here, thank you. We have a quorum this evening. The next item of business would be the approval of the agenda.
I'd like to offer that we approve the agenda with the following amendment. We add presentation 4B, our County Commissioner Helene Zach.
Support.
All right. Any discussion on the agenda this evening? All right. Marnie, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Martin.
Yes.
Pollica.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. So we have two presentations this evening, and the first one is a special one that I will introduce. I said it a few minutes ago, but welcome to Ferndale. We hear that said a lot in this community. I heard it myself almost 3 decades ago in ways that were unfamiliar to me in other places that I had lived, to be honest with you. And I think it's that welcoming that has come to define what Ferndale is about. Our motto in Ferndale is good neighbors, and we interpret that to include the diversity of our residents and guests and the benefits of an inclusive decision-making council. My fellow council members and I strive to act in ways that reflect Ferndale's shared values. Just this year, we adopted a Welcoming Cities ordinance to make Ferndale a safe place for immigrants. We publicly spoke out against the federal suspension of DACA, and 2 years ago, I became the first mayor in Michigan to perform legally recognized same-sex marriages. Together, we have made history. From affirmations and commitment ceremonies to Pride Fest and human rights ordinances, every step we've taken together has helped move Ferndale forward. And now it's time for our community to acknowledge that progress with an important, symbolic, but meaningful act. Tonight, the LGBT Pride flag will be installed in our council chambers, where it will hang alongside the flags of the United States of America, the state of Michigan, the county of Oakland, the city of Ferndale, and the POW MIA flag. Not for a week or a month or during a special event, but permanently, making Ferndale, we believe, the first municipality in the nation to do this. We're going to mark this occasion, if you don't mind, by recognizing a few of the leaders that have been in Ferndale's history as part of the LGBT movement here, both in the history and in the present, and, as you'll see in a moment, in our future as well. These are people who have contributed to this city's success, as has the LGBT community. You know, a critical part of Ferndale's revitalization and our continued success going forward is owed to these pioneers and the lessons they taught us in embracing the equality of all races and ages, identities, nationalities, and orientations. So as we dedicate the placement of this flag, I hope our residents will see this as an opportunity to once again embrace the differences in all of our good neighbors. In doing so, I believe we will see that this flag represents more than just LGBT rights. The rainbow of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, representing life, healing, sunlight, nature, art, and spirit, stand as vibrant symbols of hope for our entire community. And as mayor, I can think of no better symbol of the power of unity and what our town stands for than the values symbolized in this flag. So if you would allow me for a minute, I would like to introduce those people who have made a significant contribution, and they are a representative sampling. The trouble with asking a few people to come is that you're going to forget to ask other people to come. But just know, this isn't everybody that was part of the LGBT community here, but these people played a significant role, and I'd like to honor them tonight. So let me step forward. Nope. Yeah. Ooh, wow. There it is. Very good. All right. So the first person I would like to introduce to you is Jan Stevenson. Jan, come on up. Jan was the first, many of you probably know, Jan was the first executive director of Affirmations. This Ferndale Center held programs for the entire community, and in particular, young people. You may not know, Jan coined the Affirmations' first motto, "Gay is good," right? I love that, still love that. The center opened an art gallery in 1992 named after Pittman and Puckett, who were murdered in May of 1992 in a hate crime by their neighbor. Jan left in 1995, but she's still involved in the community because she's now the publisher of Between the Lines, the state's largest LGBT publication. Jan Stevenson. Thank you.
Is this on? I moved to Ferndale in 1988 when I came here with my partner from Philadelphia. And at that time, Ferndale was kind of a sleepy, kind of grungy little place. I accidentally walked into Loving Touch one time, not really knowing what it was, and was startled. And I wanted to just say that about a year after I moved into Ferndale, we started a group of really dedicated volunteers started Affirmations. And one of the first things we needed to do was find some space, and we were able to find some office space in Ferndale, and that's where we started the organization. And it's now in its we were there for the first 15 years of the organization, and now Affirmations has moved across the street to that fabulous building across the street on 9 Mile. But I wanted to share with you how exciting this is for me on a personal level, because I remember the first time I came to a Ferndale City Council meeting. It was probably in 1991, and there were a group of us coming to ask the City Council if they would be willing to think about maybe possibly down the road, maybe not tonight, but if they would consider an ordinance to protect LGBT, well, at that point, just gay people in Ferndale. And we were shot down unceremoniously by the people on the City Council, and they made it very clear that they did not want us not only in the City Council, but they would really like us to just leave the city altogether. How things have changed. And this is so exciting to be here with you, Mayor Coulter, and to see the flag raising, and to now look at Ferndale as the vibrant, incredible economic power that it is, in large part due to the diversity of the city and the strength of its citizens. I commend you and the governance of this body in making the city such a great place, and I just want to congratulate you on the recent 94% rating from Human Rights Campaign, one of the highest in the state of Michigan for a municipality. So,
Here. All right. Thank you, Jan. I did not invite all of our guests to speak because we got a full council meeting tonight, and no offense, but we'll be here all night if we do this. But Jan in particular had a unique perspective about what it was like back in 1991 facing a hostile city council and trying to get a favor out of them. But I do want to recognize some other leaders as well. And we're going to kind of do a from past to present theme going on. And you'll see that right now because I want to introduce to you Susan Erspamer. And Susan, if you would come up. She is the current executive director of Affirmations and does, yes. Today, as Jan alluded to, Affirmations is a modern organization in a wonderful building that provides a welcoming space for people of all sexual orientations, gender identities, and expressions and cultures that they can find support and unconditional acceptance there. And we are so proud to have Affirmations in our community and to have Susan leading it. So thank you, Susan, for being here. Yeah. Another significant LGBT event in Ferndale is our Pride celebration. I want to introduce Michael Leary to the stage, if you don't mind. Where's Michael? There he is in the back. If you don't know, Michael was the coordinator of the Pride Fest celebration for 9 years when it was in Royal Oak, and he was instrumental in moving the event to Ferndale in 2001. Now, in 2003, it officially became Motor City Pride until the event moved to Detroit in 2011. More about that in a minute. But Michael also founded and organized the Michigan Lesbian Gay Film Festival and the Comedy Fest that was held at the Magic Bag Theater. And of course, he was also a founding owner of the retail store Just for Us, which he ran from 1997 to 2004. And we're proud to have Michael as a part of our community. Thank you, Michael. So Motor City left Ferndale in 2011, but that didn't stop Ferndale. And I'd like to introduce now Julia Music, who is the current coordinator. In 2011, when Motor City Pride left for Detroit, Julia, along with former Mayor Craig Covey and Monica Mills, helped found a new event called Ferndale Pride to continue the tradition of celebrating the LGBT community and its allies here in Ferndale. In addition to being a full-time school teacher and mom, Julia is now also the primary organizer of the event, which continues to grow and shine under her leadership, and she rocks. So thank you, Julia. He's coming. Oh, I'm sorry. It was the four of you. I'm sorry. My bad. I think I know. I've only worked with you for how many years?
I keep a low profile.
The next person I'd like to introduce, a dear friend of all of ours, and that's Ann Heller. Ann, come on. Ann Heller was one of the founding members of Fans of Ferndale, which stood for Friends and Neighbors, which was the first gay and lesbian organized group in the city. She chaired the Fans Positive Police Committee that worked with our police department on incidents of disrespect towards our gay community. Today, of course, Ann is ingratiated into the community in lots of different ways. She is the board president and founder of our Fern Care Free Clinic, and she's the board president now of the Ferndale Housing Commission. She's the girl that can't say no, and we are so glad that she is part of Ferndale. Thank you so much, Ann Heller. The last person I'd like to introduce is Stephanie White. Now, Stephanie's involvement is not Ferndale specific. She's not from Ferndale, and in fact, she's from Kansas, of all places. And she and her wife currently live in Ann Arbor. But Stephanie she leads a very important group because she is the executive director of what was formerly known as the Triangle Foundation, is now known as Michigan Equality. And Michigan Equality is the state's leading education and advocacy organization addressing issues impacting LGBT people in Michigan. Her job is to keep all LGBT people safe all over the state, and I think it's appropriate that she's here, and I thought that it would also be appropriate to just give her an opportunity to say a few words about where we are in the movement and why things like this are still important. So, Steph.
Equality Michigan is a statewide political organization that seeks to make all of Michigan and all of the government entities and political entities be more like Ferndale. That's really our mission. We don't say that, but it's implied. We work around the state with a lot of different governments. You know, there's progress comes sometimes in small steps, and sometimes it comes in leaps and bounds. And sometimes the small steps that you don't think are big turn out to have a big impact. And I know some folks would say that having a flag displayed is a small step, and in some ways it is. But I want to point out the power of having a government agency permanently display this symbol of inclusion and what that conveys to everyone who walks in here. It's a powerful symbol, obviously, that of Ferndale's character and your values that says this is a place of inclusion and diversity, and we recognize that it makes the city stronger. It's also, I think, demonstrates what we all say we'd like to see in government, which is a government of and by and for the people, but how many governments actually put that into practice? In Ferndale, the flag will say, we mean it. We mean it. So thank you so much for not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. And may someday the so-called leaders in Lansing catch up to your wisdom and leadership.
Appreciate it. And now I would like to introduce our third openly gay elected official in the history of Ferndale. Is that right? In addition to being a co-founding member of Fans, Greg Pollica from our city council to join me as well. And so our final person that I would like to introduce is very special because she's going to bring out the flag for us to install in our council chambers. And as I said, the folks on this stage today represent both the history and the current LGBT community in Ferndale. But this young lady, by the name of Madeline LeBlanc, represents the future because she is the leader of the Gay Straight Alliance at Ferndale High School. She's a sophomore at Ferndale High School, the leader of the GSA at Ferndale High. Give a warm welcome to Madeline, everyone, as she brings out our flag. right. And so before we do our photo op, I want to give each of our guests here a symbol, a small token of our appreciation, which is a pride flag with the Ferndale logo on it, so that you will always remember, and it has a little stand, so don't forget to take one of those when you're done. You'll always remember this evening. So thank you all very much for being here. Again, it is our honor to present to you the LGBT flag in Ferndale. Marnie, would you give this to Jan? I told her I'd give her these notes. All right. Well, Commissioner Helene Zach, I don't know how you're going to follow that, but you are the second presentation this evening. So our second presentation is our County Commissioner, Helene Zach.
I'm just glad to be here to celebrate with you. It's beautiful.
Happy to have you here.
So I'm going to follow that. I have heard from countless Ferndale residents and residents in my district about septic water systems. We don't really have septic water systems in Ferndale, but we do have a lot in Oakland County. And I received many letters of concern about how these septic systems can go bad and pollute other bodies of water in Oakland County. So as a result of the public truly speaking out, the Oakland County Board of Commissioners is creating a study group of 3 members of the Board of Commissioners that's going to study the issue and hopefully draft a new ordinance so that we will oversee, septic tank, do regular inspections. Presently, what Oakland County does is when houses change hands or there's new systems installed, that's when we inspect them, not on a regular basis. So I'm very excited that there's going to be some action on that. Next, this is not a fun topic, but water rates. So I had the pleasure or the opportunity to watch one of our county deputy county executives, Bob Dado, he is our appointee to the Great Lakes Water Authority Board. He represents Oakland County residents on this collaborative board, and he did a presentation last week. And for those of you that want to see him in action and read his report, his update, you can go to the Board of Commissioners. You can go to www.oakgov.com, and on the left-hand side, you push Board of Commissioners. On the left-hand side of the Board of Commissioners page, scrolling down a little bit, is watch the commission website, our meetings. And somewhere around 45 minutes in is his presentation. The good news is, since the Great Lakes Water Authority has been operating, we have better bond ratings, a better fiscal analysis, and they've been able to refinance $1.2 million worth of debt, $1.2 billion worth of former debt, and save $309 million over the course of that, the payback. So that's real money in our pockets. But there are still many, many operational issues that are trying to be addressed. And I always hear from people, why are our water rates so high? And one of the simplest things to tell you is that the cost of water is really part of the administrative. It's the debt and the administrative cost, all of the operations. And when people use less water, we still have to apply that existing standard cost to all of those different gallons that we use. Just because you're using less, we still have to distribute that administrative cost to residents. Unfortunately, presently, 55% of our operation, water operation, is former debt. So that, and then that being a big piece that obviously becoming more efficient, handling things better. And then we're still addressing another thing that impacts us today is the issue of Highland Park, and they haven't paid their water bills in years. And that falls on us, and there's all sorts of lawsuits. So that actually adds about 3% up onto our water bills until that is settled. But if you want details, go to the OakGov and watch the presentation, read the materials, and you'll get a very thorough understanding. That's it.
All right.
Any questions for me? Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Our next order of business would be called to audience. That's your opportunity for anyone who's here with us in the council chambers that wants to address council on any issue that you like that's not on the agenda, because we'll give you an opportunity to speak to that when we get to that part of the agenda. But come on up, give us your name, your address, and 3 minutes is yours to speak about whatever you'd like. Good evening, sir.
Dennis Augustin, 1550 Spencer. I got this little thing called a cell phone, and I made the mistake of using it because I wanted to check into a permit for a job. Since then, the city of Ferndale has not quit calling me since way last week. Now, the only number I couldn't get a hold of is Miss Lynch over there. Why isn't your phone number on this here so we can talk to you personally? Because obviously your staff isn't doing much about it. Okay? You're supposed to be running the city when the mayor's not here. I got 5 calls today alone, and not one of them was answered when I picked up the phone and said hello. And about 20 times last week. Something's wrong with your phone systems, you know.
Clearly.
I'm answering the phone, and I'm not getting no response. But that number, 546-2525, keeps coming up. And I keep getting the city of Ferndale answering. Go to any one of the departments, and I've chose a couple of different ones.
Well, you're fortunate to be standing next to the guy who runs our IT operations, and I can assure you that there's obviously a mistake going on and a problem, and Joe Gaushaw is our assistant city manager.
I think you were the one that answered the phone one time, or left me a message one time. A couple days off with no pay, maybe?
What?
Maybe that'll straighten that up, huh?
Dennis, that'll be enough of that, all
I'm
right?
trying to be nice about this, but
You're not trying to be nice.
After so many times,
We're
Mayor,
more than happy to
so
help
many
try to fix your
times,
problem,
It's just
Dennis.
ridiculous.
But please,
It's ridiculous.
all right.
Okay?
Does Joe have your
Incidentally,
information?
I used to be union too at one time, so I mean, when I make remarks like that, I understand where that's coming from too. Because I've been union once before, a long time ago. But I'm answering the phone and nobody's there answering. Who's sitting there on that phone, leaning on that phone?
I understand your frustration,
Yeah.
and Joe will look into it. Joe, do you have his contact information? If not, Dennis, could you get Joe your contact information? We'll be sure to check
I should
into
call
it.
the phone number
Obviously,
right
there
now
is
and see if it
something
rings.
going on. Yeah. Thanks. Write down your name. Yeah, Dennis, write down your name and your contact
See,
information for
it's the whole
Joe.
department. It just tells you which department you want to contact. You press
Thanks.
one of the
All right.
numbers. Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anyone else that would like to address council on any issues this evening? Any issue at all? Yes, please, come on up.
Right there.
All
Here,
right.
take care of that and I'll be happy.
Thank you, Dennis. All right.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Wonderful.
I'm here,
What is your name?
Jamie Brimmerkamp.
Okay.
I'm a manager over at Sam's Ferndale Grill.
Yeah.
And we received a letter stating that we had to take our lights off our windows, the LED lights.
Yes.
And they're rope lights because there's like a couple different kinds, I guess. We were wondering why last February, they said it was okay. We spent $4,000 on these lights, and yeah, you guys are saying we have to take them down.
Well, unfortunately, February was before we passed the new ordinance in this summer sometime, banning the bright LED lights in the windows on the exterior of our businesses. That was done after conversation and debate here at council. So that is the law in Ferndale, that those LED lights are not allowed, and they do need to be removed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Is that your daughter?
Yeah.
She's adorable, by the way. Hello. What's her name?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Great. Anyone else like to address council this evening? All right. Not seeing anyone else, we'll move on to our next item of business, which is a public hearing. And tonight we're going to have a public hearing on the 221 West Troy Street PUD and special land use application. And this is better known as the DOT, or the Development on Troy. Joe, you're going to introduce this item, I assume?
I will. Let me get this turned back on. This just takes a second to warm up.
Oh, okay. Greg made us turn it off.
It was better for the photo op.
There we go. There we go.
Okay. All right, so we are here to present a public hearing as a follow-up to the item presented to the Planning Commission on September 20th. And this is actually about 1 year ago today that we first presented the first recommendation on this project, which was a recommendation from the Downtown Parking Committee at that time, about a year ago today, to the date, to recommend moving forward on a project concept for this specific location. Council approved that, and since then, I won't relitigate all of that we've done since then, but since then we've done quite a bit. We have curated a website that can capture all that we've done in the past year, and if you are interested, you can go to www.parkferndale.com and look at all of the public engagement process and the documents and the several meetings that we have held and
Dean Bach and I
curated
are
over
going to
the
write a
past
book,
year.
I think, right?
But in light of that, today we're just going to focus on what we're here today, which is to stick to the public hearing that was referenced from the Planning Commission. So on September 20th, the Planning Commission did have a unanimous approval to approve a planned unit development and a special land use. But the public here today probably didn't attend that meeting and might have some questions about what is a planned unit development. So we're going to answer that question. I'm going to invite Justin Lyons, the staff liaison, up in a moment to briefly talk about what a planned unit development is, just for the public record, and what its role is tonight. And to accompany that report, I also provided a summary support letter to the planned unit development application that Justin provided in the staff report to the actual site plan from Justin that just addressed some outside items that weren't conditional to the PUD for the project that the Planning Commission was interested in, and I thought the public could be interested in that as well as City Council, and I just can address those right now. So the Planning Commission had specific items that they wanted to make sure that we addressed as part of this review process in terms of our due diligence. And number one, you'll notice this is all part of the packet too. So number one, water system. They wanted to make sure that during this process, we confirmed that we understood the impact that the proposed mixed-use development would have on the water system. So confirmed that the water system could absorb the impact. We got with our water engineers, HRC, and with our Department of Public Works, And they confirmed, they looked at the entire city's water system, and they looked at the existing infrastructure, and they looked at the mixed-use development that we're proposing, and they said it would have a minimal impact, if any, on the system, so the system could easily absorb it, as well as the localized area. So we've confirmed, and we have a written endorsement from the city's water engineers saying that, yes, the system can absorb this. Second, the Planning Commission wanted an opinion from the police department on two things concerning security. One, the original concept involved a pedestrian cut-through from the rear alley to the front entrance on West Troy. The purpose of the alley was to provide a shortcut for pedestrian residential households located to the rear of the property to give them a short point of access to West Troy Commercial District without having to walk around the property, which is currently what they do have because it's just an open surface lot. So, right, you can just go right through the lot downtown. We didn't want to eliminate that. We realized we'd be adding a nuisance because we're building upward. The opinion from the police is that isolated pedestrian cut-through through a building would be creating a potential for a security risk, as we're creating an unmanned alley. So there was a concern there. Their suggestion was to remove the alley and remove the potential for a security risk. So you'll notice in the updated plan, the site plan that was submitted, the pedestrian cut-through has been removed upon the recommendation from the chief of police. The second was a security assessment of the rear alley. The police also reviewed the rear alley and did recommend that the city project team consider both surveillance cameras in the rear alley, as well as, and they want to be coordinated in terms of installation and locations. And they also want coordination of call boxes, so identifying the location of blue call boxes out of concern for pedestrian safety, of course, any user safety who's walking back there. So you'll see that represented in the drawings, and we agreed safety first, obviously, in terms of this project, and always for the downtown experience. So we would include that in our budget for this project, and you'll see that reflected in the design documents that we'll present tonight. We also assembled a large group of preliminary traffic to review a preliminary traffic control plan that involved members of the DDA and the business representatives, as well as the police department, the fire department, water department, engineers, pretty much everybody, architects, economic development. And we all just said, we're putting a good sized footprint on here. How do we want to tackle this thing? And we really kicked the tires on the project because we're also not only putting a new development here, but we're also changing possibly the shape of the street in terms of putting a lot of traffic calming elements, as we'll talk about in a few moments, by applying a street, what we will call a shared street concept, which is putting a lot of pedestrian-oriented design into the street with an endeavor to slow the street. So if we're slowing the street, we want to be mindful about how we're going to apply traffic control devices. But we talked with some network architects, and we talked with the police, and we talked with everybody at the table, and we think through a mixture of concepts which we included in the packet, leaning towards smart signalization and smart communications, which are readily available in a lot of modern parking deck communications. We can communicate outwardly to people in advance about exactly how many spaces are available at the deck at any time to help communicate in advance to people as they're heading into the deck. If the capacity has been diminished, we can let people know in advance if the deck is running low or not. In that way, that will help us control ingress and egress out of the deck as well. You'll notice there's an interchangeable center lane that could be free to, could give us flexibility to create 2 outbound lanes or 2 inbound lanes as well. So we've created some flexibility. We'll talk about that more during the design presentation. But of course, we'll continue to manage traffic control planning as design gets approved and as we continue to flesh through the approvals process. In terms of sustainability, we have had since the process welcomed a sustainability planner on, the city's first sustainability planner, and she will be managing, her name is Erin, Patel, and she will be managing the city's sustainability approach to managing the project. The city will be using the Park Smart certification. We will be pursuing a Park Smart certification in terms of how we pursue this project. So you could, when you think of Park Smart certification, it's the same approach as pursuing a LEED certification, but for a parking facility. LEED does not assign a certification towards parking facilities anymore because the nature of a facility is parking, and that conflicts against LEED's mission, so which is a sustainable building. But that doesn't mean that we can't pursue sustainable elements and a sustainable effort into how we holistically approach parking in the city and in this building. So that's what we like about Park Smart. We provided some literature on what Park Smart is. Erin has already become much more of an expert on what Park Smart is than me, so if there's any specific questions on Park Smart, she will be your captain of Park Smart as we move forward through this process. And then finally, out of the Planning Commission meeting, there were questions about integrating design elements from the existing downtown into the new standard. Since then, one of the next steps we wanted to take was meet with the DDA and meet with the Appearance Review Committee. Naturally, that would be part of the PUD approval process. We did do that. We met with them on the following week after the PUD or the Planning Commission meeting, too many Ps. They did approve the initial design concept. You'll notice in the minutes that I've attached that they did request to be involved throughout the design approvals process. So again, we'll be continuing to come back to the design to the Appearance Review Committee as we go through the design review process and as we continue to move through the project management process, keeping them involved through the decision-making process. But one thing that they did anecdotally speak of during the process is, while we want to integrate the existing standards, we also recognize the opportunity to update existing standards. So we think there's an opportunity to add new standards and update new standards while also bring in existing standards that we love and know so well to downtown too. So we see opportunity as well. So that summarizes the supplemental report from me for Justin's staff report. And now I will introduce Justin Lyons, who's just going to talk a little bit about what a PUD is and just summarize the Planning Commission's output from that meeting.
Great. Thank you. Hi, Justin.
Hi, good evening. I think Joe did a great job of kind of just summarizing where we've been and items since the Planning Commission meeting. Just for folks that weren't at the meeting, I'll kind of give just a general overview of what a PUD is, what is a special land use, why are we talking about those items. So parking structures in the city, specifically in the central business district, require special land use approval. That essentially just means that for certain items like restaurants that have outdoor seating, some other larger facilities, such as parking structures, require special land uses, which just essentially means rather than only having Planning Commission approve, Planning Commission recommends, and then Council has the final approval. So in reviewing the site plan for the DOT, the project adhered to the parking structure specific ordinance as well as special land use. As you'll note in your packet, there are two motions, one being the plan unit development approval and then special land use as well. Plan unit development, we've had a couple of those come through recently. Essentially, they are for sort of transformational projects that sometimes don't always fit within the exact standards of the zoning ordinance because of their large nature. In this instance, other than one minor deviation that you'll see that you saw in your packet, the project did adhere to the zoning ordinance guidelines, but due to the fact of the number of public amenities that were part of this project, being that there could be phases to it, it seemed to make sense to make this a planned unit development. And so in your packet, you also received a planned unit development agreement that the city would sort of abide by as this project goes forward. We also thought, being a planned unit development, should those other projects like that are transformational as such come forward, we are trying to show that the city is holding itself to a very high standard for development, and any future big development projects like that would need to be kind of check off a lot of these boxes, such as complementary mixture of uses, sustainable building design, improvements to public street systems and providing a true public benefit, which the Planning Commission, as Joe mentioned, unanimously recommended and felt that this did meet the number of standards in the planned unit development ordinance. I think Joe did a great job of just covering off on the number of conditions that were part of the approval and included in the planned unit development package. Most of those items have been addressed. Others, pretty minor in nature, such as final bike parking details and such, would be part of the final submittal. So other than that, I just wanted to give that brief overview, but I'm here for any technical questions. My staff report, 8 pages worth, was in your packet as well. So. Thanks.
All right. Are we ready for the public hearing portion, or is there more, Joe?
No, that's actually it. We're ready for the public hearing, and then I just wanted to clarify before we go forward with that, we would have the public hearing portion, and then we would be, I would be inviting our architects and engineers to present. I think from a course of action, I would suggest actually maybe we have them present and then do the public hearing.
Yeah,
so
no, we should
can show
have,
the
yeah,
information.
I'm sorry, I didn't, yeah,
And,
we should have them do that first.
I would also preface this that after the public hearing, we will be providing a separate component, just an update on where we're at with some communications pieces in terms of business and residents communications, some next steps, and some housekeeping on some updates on temporary parking solutions. There might be some questions that are out there about that, but that is separate from this specific public hearing notice. So I wanted to make sure we separated those conversations, those questions, and just keep this specific to the site plan that we're talking about.
Great. So why don't we then
Yep.
have the,
So in that case, if I could invite our project team up from Pisco, Schaefer, and Pepis,
yep.
a local Ferndale shop.
That's correct.
I'll let them introduce themselves, and then I'll go ahead and let you guys pilot.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council.
Good evening.
It is with great pleasure that I come to you tonight to present the culmination of 18 months worth of very hard work. And before I begin our design presentation, I would like to publicly thank the residents, the business owners, members of council and the Planning Commission, the steering committee, all who have had significant input, and thank them for their time that they've donated to the project. It has absolutely made the project better. As part of the presentation, I'd like to review the major components of the design. I would like to talk then a little bit in more detail about those components, and then I'll answer any questions that council or the public might have based on that. The project before you is a 5-story deck mixed-use project. The first floor along Troy is a mixture of retail, access to the parking above, and the vehicular access to the parking levels. There are 3.5 levels of parking. 1 is below grade, 2.5 are above grade. There are 2 floors of office development planned for the top of that, which would be on the front half of the development only, which are equivalent to around 40,000 square feet. And a 24-unit residential buffer to the west. We've also designed a shared street concept and making note that there are 397 parking spaces as we day one of the development. How do we, yeah, touch screen, there we go. Thank you, Joe. Here you can see the hierarchy of the building. On the first floor, we have the retail, which is equivalent to, I don't have that metric. Do you recall what the metric is, Dan? The square footage. Yeah, 14 to 16,000 square feet of retail. There is some flexible space in the back of the development along the alley that's yet to be planned. We do have some secure bike parking. We also have the vehicular entry. We have an office for Republic Parking, trash collection reassigned to that area. Above that level, we have 2 full levels of parking. And above that, we have another half level of parking, which also is the start of the 2 office floors above the 4th and 5th floor. The entire development is around 68.5 feet tall, which is below the ordinance requirement of 70 feet. We are also asking that council approve a 24-unit residential development. And what we're asking of you with that is that we approve the number of units only and the volume of that space. We understand that with the PUD process, there is opportunity to come back before Planning Commission and Council for a more formal approval of that component. One of the major elements of our design going beyond our property lines are enhancement of the public alley, which is going to include some pervious pavement. It will include some green space to help better define the rear of the building as it transitions to the single-family residential district to the south, but also a shared street concept that we've been working very diligently on. In that concept, from our property line to the property lines to the north of Troy is what we're calling a shared street. What that means is there is specialty paving with no curbs. There would be paving designs to define the street and crosswalks. But essentially that entire dimension from our property line to the property line to the north is completely pedestrian friendly. We did incorporate some of the required street tree plantings in planter beds that also serve as pedestrian areas where people can sit and meander outside the building. It also provides a little bit of safety from the sidewalk to the street. The north side of the street is dedicated completely to loading now, and we do have 3 crosswalks. One existing crosswalk, which is in generally the same location, and one at either end where we think most of the people will be crossing the street. Another amenity is a public plaza, which is permanent. That is in the location that we feel that most of the people will be coming out of the deck and accessing the corridor on 9 Mile. That's in this location here, which is at the northwest of the development. I can get into some slides about what that looks like here. We've taken careful note to match the design of the shared street and the building. Our paving patterns are derived from the structure of the building, which translates from the street up the facade. We are planning on an open parking deck, which means that the parking deck will be naturally ventilated, but there will be some visual screens provided by some corrugated metal perforated siding on the front and the back. That's done a little bit differently in both cases, as you'll see in a couple of later slides. We did take the liberty of showing what a residential development might be. We've also had conversations about what that might be as we move forward with developers. But here you can see the juxtaposition of the permanent public plaza at the Western Gateway is what we're calling that. It's a little bit larger view of what we're discussing as we talk about a public plaza. Here you can also see the development of the planter designs. What we've done is we've done a bench seat on each side of the tree grate area. Those are generally be cast in place concrete with a defined seating area that helps keep people away from the street. It gives them a little bit more defined place and a little softer place to sit than just concrete. We're thinking that might be a good opportunity for a wood or a composite product to form those bench seating. Here you can also see a light fixture that moves away from what is Ferndale's typical fixture, the acorn. And we have done some modifications to our previous design to include some of those items that you would see readily through Ferndale, the acorn fixtures, the banners, the planter boxes as well. We've kept a couple of locations that are key for the fixtures that we had originally presented. Those being the eastern and the western gateway and the mid-block plaza where the future commercial development will be. Here you can see the integration of both of those and what the pedestrians might experience along that south side of Troy. Again, you can see the planters that perform security from the cars passing by for pedestrians. They have pass-throughs through each of those. They provide a generous, appropriate size to grow tree and landscaping, and then also a reasonable sidewalk between the retail storefronts and the planters. We're thinking of an all-glass retail storefront to promote the visual connection from the street and the pedestrian access into the retail areas.
So just while you're on that slide, I'm sorry, but so there's no curbs per se, but there is a concrete sort of planter
Yes, correct.
delineation.
There would be some definition provided by those planters to delineate what is the edge of the street, what is the seating area, and what is the pedestrian way. The front of the planters are angled to keep people from sitting on that end of the planter, to keep them kind of away from traffic. We understand that there might be some safety issues with that.
Makes sense.
Here again, you can see the integration of some of the acorn fixtures and with the planters hanging also. The eastern gateway is really a vehicular gateway into the deck. We have, through our participation with the stakeholders, included excuse me, an emergency access gate on the backside to alleviate traffic confusion and problems in the event that there would be any events on the shared street and that the deck would be full, in addition to the other smart signage that we've discussed. I would like to describe this slide slightly in less detail because we're discussing what the top two floors are. We're assuming that they're going to be commercial, and we want that commercial entrance to have its own presence on the street to help tie it back down to the street. We've heard that that's very important from the real estate entities that we've been discussing potential tenants with, as well as developers who've had experience in this sort of development. Again, this is what I'm considering as a mid-block plaza. It would be juxtaposed to that entry as well, and would give a reasonable area for people coming out of the commercial development to pool in front of in front of those doors. This will give you an indication of what we're talking about for the rear of the development, and this hasn't changed a great deal from the last time that you've seen it. We're talking about some green screen applications in between the perforated deck material, but also notice that that the top two floors are stepped back from the rear of the development to help soften that from the single family. The height of this rear area is about 40 feet-ish, just to give you an idea of what the scale is there. Again, another view of the alley. What we're discussing with the alley is the permeable pavers, the introduction of these green screens that will grow out of a planter area at the base, in between the perforated metal screens, as well as some of the lighting that we had talked about before. The lighting in the back in the alley, we've introduced a lot of lighting, not just lighting every so often, but we've also mounted that at a height that's not obtrusive to the neighbors. Those are adjustable fixtures, so we can make sure that the neighbors aren't staring at a light source lighting an alley. That we're trying to be sensitive to that spillover, yet maintaining public safety. We do have a call box at each end of the alley that mimics the smart fixtures that we have on the other side of the development along Troy at the gateway points. What we're talking about in this slide is that day one, there's going to be the introduction of a temporary park along Allen. As we solicit interest from developers, residential developers, to promote that end cap, that we felt that was a positive addition to the project in terms of, we know that we want 24 units. We're talking to developers what that might be, trying to solicit interest from them. That is part of the master plan. However, there is a separate process that we have to go through to come to that fruition. So in the interim, there will be a temporary park at that location, which is juxtaposed immediately south of the permanent plaza. So those two tie very nicely together. We do recognize that designing a shared street might promote some sort of activity on that shared street at some time, and this slide gives you an idea of what that might be. This indicates a farmer's market. It could be whatever the city desires. We don't have any preconceived notions about what that is. We're just simply providing the space that can happen. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions council might have regarding that presentation.
Except that we're still in a public hearing, so we're
Sure.
premature for council questions yet. But if that concludes the presentation, then what I'd like to do is open this up for the public. So don't go too far, because there may be folks here from the public that would like to ask you questions. So I would open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone from the public that would like to address council and staff on the PUD and special land use application for 221 West Troy. Come on up and give us your name, and same as public comment earlier, give us your name, and 3 minutes is yours. Hi, Sherry.
Yes, Sherry Wells, 315 West Troy. The Western Gateway is at the corner of Allen and Troy, right across from the back of Rosie O'Grady's.
Yes.
What we have already, when people are out there smoking and yelling and screaming at all hours till 2, this is my round 3 of us residents attending these things about that parking area. And I don't remember anyone suggesting that that type of thing is going to be put there, because it doesn't sound like it's an enhancement to me. I haven't heard anyone talk about the kind of businesses that are going to be going in. One of the things that we've had that where every other business coming into Ferndale has to say we have enough parking for our business. The downtown's always been exempt, but when the downtown has been very poorly planned in terms of what kinds of businesses, you don't have any balance of when the most active activity is happening, so that some of the businesses that are more often in daytime might not have a particular lot of competition, but you have too much in the evening. So the founding fathers were never corrected by anybody who's been in office since on that one. The public-private partnership has been bothering me all along. We don't need it for roads and sewers, but all of a sudden we need it for this so that we can make something huge. We've got lofts and housing going up all over downtown, on Livernois, on West 9. I remember when the lofts came in across the street here, they were not bought into. They wound up renting, and people turned over after the year because the rent was too high. So I'm wondering about that. I found it interesting that when you opened this to the public, it was a very seriously slanted towards something that was well beyond just parking. There was inadequate information. There was really no alternative. It was just obvious to us where the people running the city. It's not the city itself. There's 2 different groups here, and I'm part of the other one. I would like to hear about the temporary parking, because we have some long-term businesses that have been wonderful citizens of this city that are scared for their business livelihoods. With the parking problem, the amount of time that it's going to be down, we have had businesses have to leave because of a parking problem, because of the poor planning as to what businesses are open, where, and when. So those are some of my concerns. For what it's worth, because I'm still stuck here for another few years, although I really am looking forward to someday moving to someplace quiet like Detroit.
Is there anyone else that would like to address council? Yes, sir. Come on up, give us your name and
Garo Boyajin. I'm at 376 West Saratoga.
excellent.
First, I want clarification. So this PUD application is only for parcel A? We're not dealing with the residential, the parcel B at this time?
Joe, or
Is that B as well? So
the entire, yes.
All right. So I didn't know if there were any restrictions as of now for parcel B, the residential. We were talking about it before about should that be set back, and I thought that was going to be done at a later date. So I'm not sure what the guidelines or
Justin,
recommendations are for that right now.
Whoever wants to take that one, yeah, now is fine, yeah.
Yeah, it can be a little bit confusing. So for parcel B, the Planning Commission essentially said, we want to have a say in the height and the general form of the building, number of units, but no matter what, it would have to go back to the Planning Commission. You can kind of see from that drawing, it's sort of, the edge of it is kind of open, things like that. The height, the setbacks, those items were part of the approval, or part of this PUD approval, but otherwise it would have to go back to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
So.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So it was what we saw in the graphics.
It was not the design per se of the residential, right? I mean, it's kind of framed to show the sizing of it,
okay,
not the design of it. Is that correct, gentlemen? Okay. Yes.
Okay. All right. And also regarding that alley, making that like a pedestrian alley, and then I was a little bit concerned about. I saw in the pictures that there were exhausts for the lower level, and so I was just concerned about kind of meshing that with making that pedestrian, and all of a sudden having kind of car exhaust being blown at you. So I don't know if
I
that's.
leave that to, I'm not.
That's.
Are
I
you
guess
guys
that's.
familiar with the exhaust he's talking about? Anybody want to take that one?
The lower level of the parking garage, since it is enclosed, it will require mechanical ventilation.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be some very low ventilation at all times. And then there will be sensors to identify if the harmful odors are present. And then the fans would come on a little bit stronger and get rid of the fumes in the garage. It's not something that you would smell fumes. It would just take the harmful levels away. It's not something that generally happens, but there's a potential for it if there's enough cars kind of in the garage running at the same time. It's not something that you'll smell exhaust like you're in the city in gridlock or anything like that. It's just a safety measure.
Through the chair, I know we talked about it at Planning Commission, but what height does it get vented to?
It gets vented to the street level, right at grade.
But if the fans kick up?
It's still right at grade. If you were in Chicago or Detroit, these are grates that you've walked under, over, around, and probably not even noticed them being there. But that's the level to which they would be exhausted. There is some natural openings to the garage, but this is just to make sure that the far reaches and the far corners that are the furthest away from the natural ventilation that can pull the air across there. Think of it like just a natural breeze going through the deck at a very low level most of the time.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
I was just going to recommend too. I know we had electric car credits or discounts on parking. Maybe if you include that, you do that for the lower level, so then you don't have as much exhaust. But
It's a good idea.
also, I like that the trash, just the FYI, that having the trash, I don't know if there's going to be a closed door or a lock or something. So I think that's a good idea because you might cut down on how often you have to empty that, because I see like early morning people come in sometimes with pickup trucks full of trash and dump that they're not probably supposed to.
Right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to address council on this item? All right. All right. We'll close the public hearing. And now I'll open it up to council. First, for questions of clarification, first of all,
Thank you.
Before we get into discussion, we would need a motion.
If I may start, through the
Yes,
chair, I'll be the briefest probably because I've been through this a number of times. through
I know
planning
you
commission.
have.
But I am curious, one of the follow-ups, and Joe talked about this, was going to the Appearance Review Committee at the DDA. And I just want to be clear about what changes they recommended. It's probably my own problem, but I'm not following the minutes. So I saw that the lighting changed slightly, correct? Between the mix of what's the new light fixtures and the Bell light fixtures that occur on 9 Mile, but the streetscape will be brought back to the arc with the belt. What does that mean?
I can introduce Barry Hicks, who's the chair of that
Thank
board.
Yeah. Hi, Barry.
Evening. Yeah, so when we went back, a couple of the design elements that were discussed at the Appearance Review Committee were the light fixtures. You saw two different styles in that presentation, and there was some discussion at that meeting about trying to follow the current street plan that we have so that it still is integrated with our downtown, but then also introducing some new elements. So you saw the new light fixtures delineating that specific area, but then you saw the acorn lights put in, which represent what's already going on downtown more at a pedestrian level. The other thing that was talked about at Appearance Review was integrating some of the ideas from this design into other parts of the downtown. So going forward, say as we start inventorying, take a look at some of our benches, we might want to use some of the design elements from this with the wooden benches at future times in other spots around downtown. So we're there's a little give and take with some of the design going on there.
Sure. And just to be clear, the trash receptacles, are we going with the existing design or want to bring the new design to the old design?
Well, the trash area is quite a bit different. I don't think I saw
the
it in
street
that-
side, not the dumpsters, just the...
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought we were
pedestrian
talking
trash.
about the
Pedestrian trash
dumpster area. Yeah, the trash cans, we would probably start moving the direction of the design that you're seeing here in other parts of the downtown. So that might change a little bit over time.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Actually, if I may,
Yes.
Your Honor, Barry, I don't know if you want to bring up the parking sign. We had that conversation about implementing the Radio City 1940s parking sign.
Oh, yeah. That what you're referring to is from the design committee. Also took a look at this separate from the appearance review committee, and one of the things that was recommended was to look at the you can see the Radio City sign right there on the left side of the screen. What had been discussed in that meeting was actually doing a larger sign actually attached to the structure that would come down and then kind of follow along that awning that you see. So it'd be the swoop, and then it'd follow the awning that we could put the signs for the stores on. That was just an idea that was discussed in concept, but I don't think we've gone into like a design phase for anything like that at this point. But that was brought up at the design committee meeting.
What's the
yes.
purpose of that sign? I'm not sure I understand.
Well, we were trying to match the existing wayfinding signage that we have from the signage package that was put together back in, I think, 2010.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if I may, I just have one more tangential question. So when I read the minutes, and I'm sorry to split hairs here, but I think it's important for direction. The minutes read that to approve the concept and materials for the DOT as presented, period. That's not the case, right? Because we changed the presentation to accommodate the light fixtures, and there are things that the Appearance Review Committee want brought back.
It should have been noted in there that there was the light fixtures, which were added, and this you can see the acorns in this one, and also the bench elements, I think, were noted. Is that, yeah, there's the fixture.
It says that, but I really want to be clear about the direction because the Planning Commission was quite adamant about this. The way it reads here is you just approved it. And then it talks about bringing back to the Appearance Review Committee, but it's not a requirement the way you have it documented here.
Yeah,
so
it's not
I
a
would clarify that.
Right. It's not a requirement, but if there were any more substantial changes that were made as we go through it, then it would have to go back to the Appearance Review Committee. If it changes from what you're seeing. What's that?
It wouldn't have to the way this is written, to my point. So if whatever you do when you approve these minutes to amend that so we're clear and it's documented, I'd encourage you to do so because I like that the Planning Commission was in alignment with the feedback from the DDA and the Appearance Review Committee, and I just want to make sure that's adequately captured. Nothing that stops us from moving forward, but so the direction is clear.
We will do that at our next meeting. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions of clarification?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
So some of these may be for a variety of people. Now, we talked about the future office portion of the project. One of my issues a lot of time, we talked about the ventilation for the parking structure, but I'd like to know where the plan shows for the HVAC system for the office. And how is that going to be shielded from the residential zone? And I say this because as someone who lives next to, or near, I should say, the Credit Union 1 building, you can, every summer, hear the air conditioning unit off of the Credit Union 1 building, and it's very loud on my front porch. And I would hate to have that happen to people in their backyards.
You're like blocks away.
I know.
The current plan for the HVAC for the office portions of the building is most likely two rooftop HVAC units like you would see, fairly typical. They would be on the roof in the center, most likely in the center of the office space. So that'll be efficient for delivery of the HVAC, and it'll be the furthest away from the edge so that it is not visible. And then there will be screening for the HVAC units if indeed they are visible. We're planning on some sort of rooftop screening. And perhaps those HVAC units on Credit Union 1 are exceptionally noisy, but...
well, there's no shielding.
Yeah, so there would be some shielding, and there's silencers on it. It'll be as quiet as can possibly be, and certainly would be within the realm of the noise ordinance.
Okay. So it would not exist on top of the parking portion of the building. It would exist on top of the office portion of the building.
That's correct.
Okay. The ventilation that we talked about earlier for the parking, where exactly is that coming out? Is it coming out into the alleyway? Is it coming out underground, up like ground grates, like in New York, subway grates?
Yes.
Okay. And that's going to be actually in the alley. It's not going to be within the parking structure.
Within the park, it will not be, you won't drive over it. It'll be an opening within the confines of the front edge of the building. So if you're walking along the alley, you would look in and see that.
Okay.
Because we don't own the project doesn't own any rights to being within the alley itself.
Okay.
So it'll be a little cut into the building.
Okay. Next is, where are the utility access boxes going to be located?
Exactly which utility access?
All of them.
All of them. At the moment, everything is coming from, next slide. Yeah, here we go. So along the bottom, we have the ventilation exhaust. There's a water meter room, and the water meter will be the entry point for the water service for the garage and the future development, what we're calling Parcel A. And then there will be the storm sewer collection starts out, it's proposed to be under the street and then go to the alley. That's where the storm is existing now, so it all heads back to the alley at some point in time. The electrical will be served overhead from the alley. That's where all the existing electrical is right now. The electrical for the west side of the portion along Allen Road, that is proposed to be buried underground. Okay. So it'll get to Rosie's, go underground, come across to the alley, and back up the way that it is currently.
Within the unit?
Yes.
Okay.
And then gas is coming in, I believe, I'm not 100% certain where the gas is coming from.
Okay. But all the access to it, all the boxes, the meters, everything is going to be contained within the unit. It's not going to be visible off of Troy or Allen or right off of the alley, so if someone's walking up, in the back of the alley, can just access those boxes. It's actually going to be within the unit itself.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see if there's a second. Access to trash. Explain to me how people are going to be, how garbage is going to be picked up. And I guess this might hit with the DDA because the trash collection that will happen within this unit will be part of the DDA trash pickup, not part of the regular neighborhood pickup, which I think happens on Friday. So I'm just curious because you'll end up having, within that neighborhood, you'll end up having two different trash days. The city's pickup is on Friday. The downtown is on Friday, whereas the neighborhood, I think, is on Monday.
So the operations plan itself hasn't been worked out yet, but the city has identified already the hauler, which is car trucking.
Okay.
So we intend to sit down with the business community and the hauler community and the city's waste services with the DPW and actually make a cohesive plan in light of the new operation as well. So we would recognize that this is a new element to the downtown, and we would have to create a new standard operations plan.
Okay.
In light of that. So,
Okay. And I appreciate you providing that detail.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. But my understanding is they would access it then off the alley. Is that correct? From the south end?
No, the rubbish collection will come from the street side.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's one of the things in developing our concepts and discussions with the residents is to the south to eliminate any sort of rubbish collection there.
Excellent.
It's noisy, it's smelly, it happens at the wrong time at night, so making it enclosed was a win-win for everyone.
Okay. Well, I guess this is more of conversation. Yeah, I guess the next two are more conversational than questions.
Okay, then hang on to those.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Other questions of clarification?
I do. Can you talk to me about the traffic signaling and kind of explain how you anticipate that to work, particularly on heavy inflow and outflow days? I guess that's the layman's terms of talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, a lot of modern decks are operated through smart signalization, and so I might call him audible and ask Stephen Smith if he's prepared. I didn't even know he was going to be here tonight, but essentially we did have him monitor our meeting to make sure I was correct about this, but through smart signalization, we can basically load balance the parking deck. So what we would do is every time we have cars coming into the deck, we would know that our capacity is going down, and so we know how many spaces we have left to sell. So if we set a threshold, let's say at 50 spaces left, we can decide to change the middle lane to an outbound only lane, and now we can support 2 exit only. So now we have 2 exit lanes exiting out the deck, and we can force traffic to go outward to Woodward only, which now it changes the way you would direct traffic flow in times of, let's say, peak hour traffic when it's busy. And you would do that through smart signalization because we understand through technology where the traffic is and how much capacity we actually have left in the deck because we're monitoring car counts every time it comes in and every time it goes out. We can then, and I think we can communicate that capacity outwardly onto Woodward for that traffic coming in off Woodward and is planning on going to the deck, we can communicate in advance to that traffic as they're coming into Woodward if there's already no capacity left in the deck, so they don't waste the trip coming down to Woodward and add in traffic to an already exhausted street. Is that kind of
Yeah, these would be through intelligent variable message signs that would be public facing to communicate with traffic on the main roads. So we could discourage use of the deck should it become full. And we, through intelligent count differentials, we can make that whole process rather dynamic. So technology's
I think that's great and helpful, and that is sort of signaling from the outside of the parking deck. What about if you're a car driving into the deck? Well, there will be a signal to tell you how many spaces are available per floor once you're in there. So if there are 54/7 spaces available on the fourth floor, which is the amount of spaces, when you enter, will it say?
We plan to use technology to direct traffic as best as we can. Yes, to drive capacity where possible.
So, okay.
Where there's decision points, I think that there remains a possibility of a directional sign that is a variable message, maybe only in two different variables, but it can say, hey, go forward, or no, you want to go left now, depending on the use case inside this particular facility. This is a relatively small facility, so...
Right, but people might choose to go to the first floor when the only spaces are available on the fourth floor.
Exactly, and that's where the
you
technology could be useful.
Right.
If we have a load sign that says there's 200 spaces up and 1 space down, we want to nudge you to go up.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of clarification? Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Or someone could make a motion, but
We're still in the
but go ahead.
questions
Yeah.
of fact-finding.
The plans that I'm seeing here are plans that I've seen a lot, and just maybe some tweaks here and there. The newest thing to me that I don't recall hearing about is the residential portion. So is that a new addition? I mean, a proposed residential there. I'm just trying to get some clarity as to maybe I missed something.
No, that's a piece that we've been proposing with the Planning Commission as part of the mixed use. So there was and I'll just go back and reframe what the city's proposing as part of the bond project is 4 levels of parking. One of those levels is below grade. Street level retail, the alley improvement, and the streetscape improvement. That is what the city has been looking to achieve. And the mixed use components of this were the 2 levels of office on top and the residential units that were hugging the Allen Street portion of the project, and that was viewed as 18 to 24 possible micro units of residential that were going to be located off the Allen Street portion of the project.
Yeah, I had one final traffic question too, if the residential has been appropriately answered.
Yes.
Okay. The traffic light at the corner of Allen and West Troy, that's kind of new too from what we've talked over. Can you talk a little bit about whether it's going in or are you guys still studying it? And how will we come to the determination whether there should be a traffic light?
I will invite Chief Tim Collins up to talk about traffic light determinations.
And
Out of my jurisdiction.
Are we using someone other than the TIA to help us come to the determination of that? I would be supportive of a different entity.
There is no traffic signal currently at that corner. That's controlled by a 3-way stop sign.
Right, but it says in here, the Michigan Department of Ed and Transportation has a method for determining whether an area would warrant the installation of a signal or further study.
That's correct. If there is a traffic signal or a traffic control device must be warranted in the state of Michigan, so it has to meet one of 8 different criteria. If it does, then we could, it's not necessary to put a traffic signal in, but you could put a traffic signal in at that point.
Well, is that part of the recommendation of this PUD to study it, or to implement it, or to do what?
No, to clarify, as part of my packet, we originally met as a traffic review team. That was one of the things that we were reviewing as opportunities or options. So just options, we reviewed signalization, controlling traffic through signalization, and also controlling through traffic warrants. And the police were just explaining us the method of which we would do that.
Okay.
And that's just what that is. That's explaining us the method of how we would pursue traffic signalization if we wanted to pursue
But
that.
not something you're actively pursuing at this point, is what it sounds like you're saying.
No, we were just looking at the process to do that, if we could even do that.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to,
That's just
point of
before that.
clarification, it's in there. But if you do, I highly recommend you take a different approach than the TIA. When the time warrants itself, if it ever does.
Other
I have further
questions?
questions, but now on something different, and I'll talk to the Mayor Pro Tem about it offline.
Okay.
I want a further clarification based off the conversation that Mayor Pro Tem Piana started. I believe, Mayor Pro Tem, you were indicating a traffic light at West Troy and Allen.
It says right here? Yeah.
Well, it says West Troy. I didn't see anything about Allen.
Oh.
I was under the impression it was West Troy and Woodward that it was being proposed for traffic
Could be either.
coming off or coming out of the structure toward Woodward, because now that we've created twice as many parking structures, if we have a mass exodus out of that structure, you're going to have a lot of cars lined up at Woodward on Troy trying to get onto Woodward. Because you do now. There are times where there's 3 or 4 cars waiting to turn.
I say we need to see what happens and then adjust as you go.
For point of
because you don't
clarification,
know.
we had conversation about this at Planning Commission as well. And again, this is just options that's in this proposal, correct me
Right.
for being honest. But, there are a lot of different options and opportunities here. For example, having auxiliary or police direct traffic during
Yep.
peak times. It doesn't have to be necessarily a hard signal, and I think those decisions are yet to come. So I would like to move in the matter of 221 West Troy Street, City Council approve the Plan Unit Development Application Agreement and Site Plan dated October 18th, 2017. I'm sorry. I'm on the PUD. The special land use is next. Does one have to come before the other? I'm
Right.
sorry. Let me start over. I move that in the matter of 221 West Troy Street, thank you, the City Council approve the Plan Unit Development Application Agreement and Site Plan, it says, no?
And-
Okay.
Special land use?
And special land use, I'm sorry.
So special land use is a separate motion.
It says PUD and special land.
All right, we got a little confusion going on here.
You may have to start over again, Mr.
Okay, my
Councilman.
copy is the way it's written, because I understand it's two different motions.
What page are you on?
17.
Yeah, here, they list them as.
I move that in the matter of 221 West Troy Street, City Council approve the Plan Unit Development Application Agreement and Site Plan dated October 18th, 2017, with the following findings and conditions as outlined in the packet. And then there's
Support.
a second motion to come after that, around the special land use.
Is that correct? All right, I'm looking at Justin. Then the agenda is not, because the agenda says the first item is PUD and the SLU.
Yeah, that's what I was going.
I see.
So that's the
Those are
confusion.
two-
But
yeah.
the documents themselves are correct. It's the PUD and the site plan as moved. So it has been moved
Can we
by
take a vote
Councilman
there?
Martin. Is there support?
Support.
All right. So it's been moved by Councilman Martin, supported by Councilman Polika. Now, discussion on the approval of the PUD and the site plan.
I'll kick it off based just on experience with the numerous meetings on this. And first, a compliment to Joe and Justin and Jordan and the DDA and everybody involved. Just an incredibly thorough vetting with multiple, residential business feedback. All of it very useful. And I know, there's components of all plans that people are going to find popular and ones they are not. I feel very comfortable with this based on all the work that's done. You guys did a great job. I think the Planning Commission vetted this well, to the point that we went around and around with it for, 18 months we've been wrangling with this thing. So I'm supportive of it. I'm thrilled. 6 years ago, I said we need to build a parking garage. I'm kind of glad we're here. I'm glad it's the mixed-use solution. And again, my compliments to staff and the openness with which we've proceeded with this. And I very much look forward to talking about mitigation. That's it.
Excellent. Others?
I guess I have some clarifications. It wasn't really questions. So we keep talking about this temporary park, and we keep talking about the residential unit. And temporary park is going to go in before the residential unit, if a residential unit is ever decided to be built. I guess my concern is, at what point do we say we're not going to pursue a residential project on that site? Because I would hate to spend a lot of money putting in a park, planting trees, and then 5 or 7 years, these trees have developed, really well, and then we're ripping them out to put in a residential unit. So I guess I'd like some clarity on, what point is temporary? What are we considering temporary? 3 years? 5 years?
2 months. I think based on the demand for this property, I think it's very temporary. I think years is not the right way to measure it.
Okay.
I would agree, and so I would just to add on to that, I would say, because I heard the comments about the parks, and the parks looks wonderful, but I also think that the park needs to be something temporary and not particularly expensive or permanent.
I wouldn't spend a lot of money on it.
I would like to redefine it from a park
Yep.
to a pedestrian gathering place.
Temporary.
Temporary, yeah, yes. And I think that's what that would suffice until a residential development would be there. My concern all along, if I may,
Please.
has been.
Well, I mean,
yes,
let me just say,
go.
Councilman Pollock
Go.
has had the floor.
Please go ahead.
So, with that, I'd just like to thank everybody who's been involved in this process, which is a lot of people. I really want to thank the residents for coming out and participating in this whole process. I think we have a different project because of it. I think the residents provided a lot of information and a lot of direction that helped us create a project that is going to be a wonderful addition to our community. It's amazing that you could say that about a quote-unquote parking structure, but it's not a parking structure. I have been very vocal about the design for a long period. I have in my mind a very certain type of building that I would have liked to have seen. I know that a lot of people don't agree with that, but I'm not going to argue that point to the point of voting no. I will, on one point, like to suggest, I noticed the grates on the north and east sides are going to cause a lot of reduction in natural light. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we can make sure we can access as much natural light without, some type of product that can create as much natural light in that, in those parking levels without, us seeing cars and hoods, as you like to call, car hoods, passing by.
Call it car prison.
Car prison. Maybe they can be angled, down so that it allows light coming down, and maybe it has a more textured look to the building. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would like us to pursue something like that if it's possible. With that said, I'm very happy that we've taken the time to move forward on this project. I know 18 months ago when we first started talking about that, we said we wanted to break ground in January, and mine was we can break down when we sure we have the right project for the community, and I feel we have the right project for the community. Thank you.
Chair, I just wanted to follow up on the comment about the residential. For me, supporting multi-use building in our downtown was critical to the success of our downtown, not just now, but into the future. Buildings that have multi-uses have a higher return on investment for the community, not only in terms of paying tax dollars, but also the benefits of improving the downtown and the pedestrian experience and how people interact with your downtown. And so for me, the concern has always been, while we support the PUD and special land use for this development that includes future office space and residential, that we're approving the retail and parking deck today, that it's contingent in the success of our ability to pay off the bond in a timely way, and during any future recession is important that we have this other revenue coming in through office and residential. So for me, having the letter of intent or the LOI to find the right development partner to come to the table to build these components are critical. and that needs to happen fairly quickly after the approval of this project. And so finding the right partner has to happen in the next couple of months. And I know our assistant city manager is putting that in place to move that forward more quickly than, waiting until down the road. Because I think for me, it's how do we, the thing that I've heard from businesses and residents is how do we have the shortest construction time frame possible, and that includes the office and residential. I don't think we want to build the deck in retail and then 6 months later close off things again in order to build the other components. So getting it all done together is, in my opinion, the best outcome for everybody who is impacted directly adjacent to this project. With that in mind, I'm very happy that we're here. I remember where we were with another development project many years ago, and we said we'd take a step back and make sure that we would revisit the process and have engagement with our residents. And so concurring with what Councilmember Pollock has said about making sure that we had citizens and who were directly impacted in this project involved, they definitely made this project better for the community. And for that, I know having change come into your downtown where you may not have expected it from 20 years ago can be jarring, but downtowns are always evolving and changing, and I think it's the best how do we as a community respond to it. So I'm very pleased with this direction and support moving forward. But I do have to say this, you build a downtown for more cars, you get more traffic. And while we know we have a traffic problem, the shared street is also making sure we're designing for people. And I just want to say we're concepting out a new thing, a shared street. And I appreciate the Planning Commission for taking on that recommendation and figuring out how to make it work in this project. I see that the future of the shared street needs to be extended all the way down West Troy to Woodward, and would hope that that would be part of the planning process for improving all of West Troy in the future, not just in front of the building. So that's it.
Anyone else?
Oh, yes. And there was a resident who brought up what types of businesses are going in.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was wondering if city staff can talk a little bit about how do we find retailers to go into these spaces and what that process could look like.
At a high level, I mean, we haven't pursued anything, but from a space perspective, the street level is meant to be street level retail, so it would be consistent with the commerce you see right now representing retail in Ferndale. I would imagine the same market exists for this future market. And then above, office is really what is consistent with the master land use plan and the city's council strategic plan. So to the speaker's point, we recognize a gap and a need to provide some daytime activity downtown. And so we see office as a critical missing gap that the city, this space could fill. So there's 39,000 square feet of opportunity for office that would be above, and the PUD would cap it at that 39,000 square feet. That would be going above the parking. And then there's the residential component again to provide the complete mixed use component on the site plan, and that is capped at the 18 to 24 units.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you've all expressed yourself very well. I don't have a lot more to say, in part because we have been talking parking deck for 18 months and for 6 years and for a decade or more. Our predecessors, both on the council and the DDA, have been screaming to us to do something like this for a long time, and so we've had a lot of conversations with it. I will thank some people, and I'll start with the DDA because this has been a joint effort with us and them and us together to solve a problem in our downtown that is long overdue. I would echo what you said about the involvement. Greg and I were joking about this the other day, or Councilman Polika, but everything takes longer than you expect. Not just parking decks, but everything. Because when you want to do it right and you want to be inclusive and you want to get all of the input that you can, it just takes longer. And this project is no different, and I had hoped to have broken ground by now, and we haven't, but we will in the first quarter of next year. And I think it's a design and a project that reflects the input that we got, and I'm thankful. So I'm thankful for the residents. I'm thankful for the business owners and the DDA. I'm thankful for the business owners that don't want to do it, and residents that don't want to do a deck, because their input was just as valuable, if not more, than the folks that were supportive of it. We've changed and modified this a lot. One of my questions, in fact, is going to be: I know that there was a resident meeting. I think maybe Barry, you helped organize it with some of the downtown business owners that generated a list of suggestions, many of which were quite reasonable, it seemed to me, as a non-parking deck expert. And so are we responding to those? Are we gathering answers to those and going to respond to those business owners in that? That's just a kind of a broader question. I don't know who to look at or ask that question to. I assume we are. I know you know the list I'm talking about, right?
Yes, we have taken a lot of different questions, attended some community organized meetings and things like that.
Thank you.
And we'll be responding to those very soon and throughout the entire process. We hope to stay engaged with our business owners throughout the whole thing, getting feedback from them as it goes forward and doing anything we can do to help.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's absolutely right. You know, things are going to happen. Things are going to happen that we didn't anticipate happening. We're going to be inconvenienced in ways that we weren't expecting to be inconvenienced. So I ask for people's forgiveness in advance. And patience in advance. And know that just that we're as responsive as we can possibly be to those concerns, and we'll try to address them and mitigate them when they come up, right? But it's time, and I think it's the right time, and this is the right project in my mind, and I'm happy to vote yes tonight. Any other questions, comments? Then, Marty, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Polika,
Yes.
Piana,
Yes.
Leaks May, yes, Martin,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. So now there's another item, which is the
Fair. I would move in the matter of 221 West Troy Street. City Council approved the special land use based on plans and applications dated received by the Planning Department on October 18th, 2017, with the following terms and conditions subject that are documented in the packet.
Support.
moved by Councilman Martin, supported by Councilman Polika. Now, discussion, questions, comments on that?
Ditto.
Right.
Previous discussion.
Right, yes. All right, Marty, would you call the roll?
Council members Piana,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Do you have horns or anything? No, bells or whistles. All
I
right.
think that deserves an applause.
Yeah, right. So, Joe, you said there were a couple other things that you wanted to touch base with us on this evening?
I did. It's not on the agenda, but I wanted to add the presentation, if you'll allow me.
Okay.
Brief, don't worry.
About parking?
Ooh. Yeah, I did want to provide an update, take this opportunity to provide the viewing public with an update on just where we're at with temporary parking solutions, as well as just to follow up on some next steps in terms of just what you can expect on communications moving forward. A lot of our next steps have been hinged and connected at the hip to the approvals process, and we have gone through that process effectively just now. And so some next steps in terms of temporary parking solutions. So goals, just to recap really quick. We understand that we have to create some viable additional parking spaces to address our downtown audiences, which we've identified here during construction. So a couple of those solutions. Free downtown valet. On June 26th, City Council did approve Star Tracks, awarding Star Tracks, who's a local valet provider, and a company that has a presence already operating downtown, the award to provide valet services to downtown businesses during construction. We have met with them and worked out the legal agreement. We did go out to bid for that service. And right now, they are still going through the valet permit process like you would any other program. And what that means is they have to submit their plan. They've met with our team. They submit their valet plan for their kiosk locations and their route planning. Our police department and internal team reviews that for public safety purposes. They approve that. Once that gets approved, we can move forward with the process. So right now, the police department are going through an internal review of the valet stand locations and the traffic route approvals. From that, we're having our initial operating time discussions, what we can within budget and what would be most helpful to the downtown business community. For that, we've invited the DDA to have a discussion and brought them to the table in terms of what's helpful, what's most helpful for the audience that we're trying to help. But one of the things that I wanted to touch on with valet is we liked it because it's flexible, right? So if it's not helpful during the hours at the start, we can move it and we can shift the hours. And Star Tracks is aware of that, and they are willing to be flexible with us. So if we offer it at the beginning, I guess I would say what we offer in the beginning might not be what we offer at the end of it. We will shift based on the demand that is needed. To that end, we recognize that it's a new service, and it's a big new service to offer downtown. So we want to test, and we want to make it good. So we are going to be rolling it out as a test during the holiday weekends coming up. So during the Black Friday weekend, we're going to be working with the DDA to roll out free valet downtown, November 24th through 26th, to promote Small Business Saturday downtown. That will be reflected in communications. And I glossed over that point because we are working on incorporating these 2 points into our wayfinding, signage, and communications. So included in the communications piece that Kara's going to be talking about, we'll be incorporating valet stand locations, valet wayfinding, and valet contact information. So you'll know all about that as a downtown visitor and as a downtown business, how to get that information. But what we'd like to do is test that service. And it's at no charge to the businesses or to downtown guests. So Black Friday weekend, Small Business Saturday weekend. And then I think, Barry, correct me, I might have got this wrong, the Holiday Ice Festival weekend, I think it's December 8th through 10th. That's the DDA's major.
He's nodding yes. You got it right? Okay.
Okay. That was a no-look approval. December 8th through 10th, we'd like to offer it that weekend too. So we're working with the DDA on coordinating that. But we think those two are great opportunities to test it as a service before we roll it out in perpetuity during construction. Let's take the time right now. What a great way to promote the holidays downtown this year.
That's nice. Yeah.
Next, shared parking agreements. We recognize that it's a desired goal to add parking capacity when we're taking 138 spaces off lot. So we are close to securing, we believe, around 70 parking spaces on the fringe of downtown. It's within a half-a-mile walk, which is pretty close. We recognize it's not as convenient as downtown, but it's reasonably close. It's pretty close. It's a significant amount of parking spaces. We haven't secured an agreement yet, but we believe we're in process, and we hope to have an agreement in place with this provider, hopefully within the next 30 to 60 days. And once we have an agreement in place, we'll be more than comfortable with adding that to our wayfinding communications package. And you'll know where it is because we will be effectively communicating the heck out of it.
If I may, through the chair, for the sites that's for Kulik and the high school, are we talking about shuttling between those locations?
We are not. So what came out of that community meeting is a desire to have an identified parking lot to coordinate carpool for small businesses. And so small businesses that might have classes where parents want to just coordinate on one location to huddle up and then shuttle themselves downtown. So we thought we could offer some existing city infrastructure lots. And so the Kulik Center, which is located just over a half a mile, it is well lit. It is next to the fire department. You have Chief Sullivan to protect you. He's right there. It is also... It is also.
I feel safer already. I know.
It is also well surveilled. So it's a good lot. As well as that, we have the Ferndale High School lot, which is a mile. We'd be more than happy to discuss with the schools opportunities there. But just thinking outside of the box, that was discussed as being an option at that business meeting, and I wanted to publicly say yes, we are more than open to working with the business community on opening up the Kulik Center lot as possible carpool lot, and we would add signage there, and we would incorporate that into the wayfinding as an opportunity for businesses.
I'm sure if we made it a fundraiser, Ann would run back and forth from the high school like Uber for Fern Care. So. I think we can get creative.
Yeah, there's something there. Yeah.
Wayfinding and walkability, I've been hitting that a lot. So an effective wayfinding and walkability campaign is a prerequisite to any successful construction mitigation program. We understand that, and we are working on that. That project deliverable is expected to be forthcoming within the coming weeks. That is underway. It's being developed, and it is being developed under best practices. Matter of fact, the signage is part of a best practice campaign that exists for walkability and wayfinding for just this type of downtown and just this type of occasion, trying to endeavor to meet just the type of walkability goals in many similar construction projects downtown.
You happen to have the expert who put them all in Detroit living
There you go.
at the lofts at
Okay.
Wayne State. No, she
So
put
you're
them in at
familiar.
Wayne. Yep.
Oh, cool.
You're familiar. So one thing we want to do, Ferndale is very walkable.
Someone
We
who
want
put
to
'em in
be
the
proud of
downtown
that.
Detroit.
We want to own that. Most of our lots are located within 0.3 miles of the project site. That is about a 5 to 7 minute walk. We want to own that. We want to be proud of that. So we are one of the most walkable cities in the metro area. We want to stand up and own that as part of this walkability campaign. We're working on that. Bikeability. We also are one of the most bikeable towns. If only we had a staff advocate who liked biking. We don't, but.
We're a council advocate.
So out of that community meeting came some requests for some bike rack love downtown, especially on West Troy. So we're going to be looking at what we can do to add or repair some damaged bike racks downtown, because there's been expressed need for more bike capacity downtown during construction. So we're working with Justin on that, and then seeing what we can do to incorporate that into our communication so there's more awareness about where you can park your bike in lieu of driving on weekends, especially during peak times.
Joe, if I may.
Sure.
I'm trying to think, where have I been? Anyway, because now, was it through this community meeting, I guess that, so regarding the shuttle turned into a carpooling option and just kind of
Both items
disappeared?
were discussed. It was identified that there was some disappointment that the city hasn't pursued the shuttle option. I will say that the city did explore the shuttle option. We sought different competitive bids for outside vendors. Unfortunately, every option that came in was well outside of our budget range. It exceeded the budget. So at this point, we would be open to it if we can find an option that's within our budget range. But the city doesn't have the capacity from a staffing perspective to manage a dispatch and effective shuttle operation internally, and to outsource it was outside of the budget. It exceeded the dollars. From a wayfinding perspective, we are looking at adding parking lot entry signage. We've heard that's, and we understand that to be a gap within our downtown signage. We see the P signs pointing people towards parking, but we don't actually have parking lot identification signage about where you are at within the system itself. So we can't encourage people to outer lots if we don't show you where the outer lots are downtown. You might not know the first time, but next time you come, you might see them. To that point, we'll be adding the valet interest points and other interest points, as well as the transportation options that we were discussing, to really try to point out alternative means of getting downtown and getting around downtown. And we can update as needed, and that's the kind of program we'll be looking to incorporate, something that's flexible and can be built and grown upon as needed. And looking at the outer lots, we are in the midst of an internal review of our downtown business parking program. One of those is just reviewing how we communicate our downtown permitting program. We're reviewing the ordinance side, updating our language to help give us a little bit more flexibility on what we can do. And then from a business enterprise side, we're looking at opening up the amount of permit eligible spaces in the outer lots to encourage more use of those lots by the permitted employees. You can see I just named 4 lots right there, and I showed you, I can kind of draw up an example of what the capacity looks like. 273 spaces could be permit eligible. I didn't actually show you what it's currently existing is about 80 to 100 of those spaces are permit eligible, so we're doubling the amount of eligible permit. Now, these are not, I want to clarify, these are not guaranteed spaces. These are eligible spaces. That means if you have a permit, you're eligible to park in any one of these 273 permit spaces. And then you see the distance to the site. So none of these sites exceed more than a half a mile walk to the site, which is about a 10-minute walk according to Google Maps. So I guess what we're trying to illustrate is just we're a walkable community. We're going to do what we can to encourage the use of the outer lots, which statistically show that they're underutilized during the day. And for the most part, they're underutilized except during the dinner rush, which is between 6:30 and 7:30. Outside of that hour, which they are utilized, but if you look at the data outside of that hour, they're underutilized. So what can we do to better utilize them and push the utility out during the construction period? That's one of the jobs that we're going to try to solve through the communications and wayfinding and through the mitigation. So I can take any questions on that, or we can wait till the end and let Kara speak on communications, and we can hold questions for both if you'd like.
Greg?
Well, I do have. Your presentation triggered a concern that we might want to address, or maybe too critical. But with the temporary removal of that parking lot, we're going to end up forcing, I shouldn't say we're going to end up forcing, people are going to start to look further out on side streets. So I'm wondering if maybe we should look at possibly extending the residential parking zones maybe 1 or 2 streets further out, just temporarily. And maybe after that temporary period, a year or so, maybe the streets want to keep them, but it might be something to look at just to reduce some of the parking that is going to end up happening, I think, on Leroy and Albany on the west side, as well as just north of Breckenridge, and there's no parking on Camborne, is there?
If I may, through the chair, I agree with the sentiment. I don't like the idea of this body dictating that, though. They have the option today to pick up the residential parking.
I didn't say we should. I suggested that we investigate.
Well, they have it today. I agree with you. Maybe it's a matter of communication. They can today, through petition, implement the residential parking on their block. So I would encourage the communication to get people to adopt it if they're so oriented. It's a good idea.
From an operations perspective, we can also study it and see what it would take to enforce it and do all the due diligence work on the outset.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Kara.
Kara, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to do a brief run through on communications, let everybody know where we are and where we are going. So we have officially launched with the DOT communications plan. It looks like what you see in front of you. We have our first few brochures, one for residents, one for business owners. They're very similar. We also have a shorter piece that will be for general audience, and several other pieces in the works. There's also a digital website presence, ferndale.com, that has all of these materials, a great media kit, and kind of a news blog so that we're able to constantly keep up on the information, getting it out there to residents and business owners. So this is officially the communications vehicle that we're going to be using. Whether information comes from the city to residents or the general audience, or whether it comes from the DDA to business owners, it's going to look like this. And so the plan is to keep this throughout so that there's no confusion about where the information is coming from and who it's meant for.
Through the chair, particularly like the co-branded DDA for the businesses. I think that's important.
So just a little bit about audiences. This is not a one-size-fits-all project, and not our entire audience is all going to have the same needs. So we definitely wanted to break this down. We have presented this before. Not too much has changed here. We obviously have business communications coming from the DDA, and that's going to the general downtown and slightly expanded business community. And then we have our residential communications broken down into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is meant for the residents who live adjacent to the actual development. Tier 2 is, or level 2, for residents who live adjacent within, I think, 300 feet we went with any public parking lot, because things might change for them a little bit because of this. And then level 3 is basically everybody else, including general audience and visitors, people who don't necessarily live here. So, to go through the timeline a little bit, give you a better idea of how we're communicating, I have heard a couple of times it seems slow, the communications, and that's by design. We are not throwing out everything we have because this isn't the time to do it. So the timeline for this project was created very deliberately, and we have come back and revisited that pretty much monthly since we put it together, and we will continue to do so. My guess is it will continue to be fluid as we go into groundbreaking. So, ooh, that's really skewy up there. You probably can't read it, but we officially did our business soft launch in September. That means that business owners got a copy of this initial brochure along with a letter explaining what's coming next and how this is going to work into the plan. The residential soft launch is happening. We got brochures today. It's happening in the coming week, which means they will also get one of these brochures and a letter, everybody in Tier 1 and Tier 2, and walk them through a little bit of what they're going to expect next. We're then going to go into our business soft launch phase 2 in November, hopefully in the week to 2 weeks prior to Thanksgiving. That is going to be a whole business communications toolkit. That means that they get general audience brochures that they can hand out to anybody who comes into their business and wants to know what's going on. They can have coasters, they can have bags, they can have flyers, they can have big posters to hang on the wall, they can have social media content. The goal is to give them everything that they are going to need moving into the holidays and moving into the groundbreaking to help them communicate this to their audiences. Right. And so that we hope to have done just before Thanksgiving. And then we're going to do kind of a brief little temporary parking solutions communication once we have the details of that finalized. That will be in early December. We want to hit that before kind of the big holiday shopping rush. And we will talk about where valet locations are. We will talk about how it works, what it costs. I know valet is no cost, but we'll talk about all of those details then. And then the official community-wide launch of this is meant to happen approximately 8 weeks before groundbreaking. So the project starts in March, then expect that this communication launch will happen sometime in late January. And that's going to be fluid. If it's delayed for some reason, we're going to continue communications, but we're going to continue to do it slowly. We want to make sure that once people are actually feeling the strain of trying to park, and once they're actually seeing fences up and a banner around the fence, that's when they're getting the majority of the information from us, and we continue that through the process.
All right. Questions? Since that's what it says. I think that was helpful. That's good to know. Thank you. I appreciate it, Kara. Thank you.
Thorough.
All right. Very good. Let's move on now to the consent agenda. Consent agenda are items that council considers routine, and we enact in one motion unless somebody removes something from the consent agenda. So item A is the approval of the minutes of the regular approval of the meeting minutes of the October 9th, 2017 meeting. Also, Marnie, I know you weren't here, but we didn't have the meeting minutes from the meeting at our last meeting. So I think we're still missing one to approve. So that would be the second meeting in September we should still have? Excellent. So we'll have to do that next time. Thanks. Item B is the proclamation of the Wayne Smith Police Auxiliary retirement. And item C is the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the City Manager's Office, subject to review by the Council Finance Committee. What is council's pleasure on the consent agenda?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Yes. All right. Is there any discussion? Chief, I assume we'll give him that proclamation at the auxiliary dinner?
Yes, sir, we will.
Excellent. Which is November 3rd, I want to say. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Marnie, would you call the roll, please? No, did we have a motion?
Oh, yes.
You moved it.
Yeah.
Did you support it?
Yes, I
I'm sorry, I
supported.
didn't hear the support. Okay. Moved and supported.
Councilmembers Leaks May, Yes. Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. The consent agenda is adopted. We have no regular agenda items this evening, so we'll move right on to the call to council. And Chief, since I picked on you, anything for the good of the community this evening?
Just one thing this evening, Your Honor, I'll be brief. I will define brief different than Joe Gaucho will. As you know, this is the first meeting before Halloween, or there won't be another meeting before Halloween, so we want to remind our residents and our visitors to please be safe. Please walk your children throughout the community. The visitors that come into the community, we will be out there in force to make sure that they also, one of our biggest problems, and we have very few, but one of our biggest problems is that we'll have moms and dads following their little one in a car with their headlights on, and that causes a hazard for the kids as they cross the street, and it's unpredictable and it's dark. So we just want to remind everybody to be safe, and please walk your little ones as you go doing the trick-or-treating.
Excellent. Great reminder. Thank you. Fire Chief Sullivan, anything for the good of the community this evening?
We should see if we can guess what he says.
Yes, Your Honor. As fall is coming with Halloween as one of the problems, it's not coming as fast as it usually does, but parking in leaves is a really bad idea. It's a way to start your car on fire. And if we can, even though the DPW does a great job of collecting leaves, for Halloween, don't rake any piles or that out onto the curb. So let the day get over with, and the kids won't be camouflaged in the leaves, and people won't try and park in them, and we won't have any problems that way.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if anyone from the DDA has any events or items that you want to present. You're certainly willing. You're certainly welcome to do so. Not trying to put you on the spot, Cindy.
No problem. I'm going to follow the Halloween bandwagon here.
All right.
The downtown merchants are once again doing trick-or-treating in the downtown this Saturday, the 28th.
That's what I
From
thought.
4 to 6 p.m. The list of businesses participating is growing. So the best bet is to look for the businesses with the trick-or-treat sign in the window. But we will be posting as updated a list as we have closer to the event day. But last year there were about 40 merchants that participated, and we're anticipating more this year. So it'll be a fun day.
And sorry, what time does it start?
4 to 6 p.m.
4 to 6. Great. Excellent. Thank you. Make anything from DPW this evening? No. All right. How about finance? Any financial updates this evening? Budget is still balanced. That's the main thing. Kara, anything else from community engagement and communications? All right. Justin, because I don't see your... Nothing. All right. Nothing else from... All right. Joe, anything from the citizen... No. Chief kind of shamed you into that answer, didn't he?
My goodness.
Marnie, anything from the city clerk's office this evening?
Well, as much as I love to talk about Halloween, we also have an election coming up
Yes, we do.
on November 7th, Tuesday, November 7th. Please get out and vote. We do have AV ballots, absentee ballots available here at City Hall. Saturday, November 4th, City Hall will be open from 9 to 2 for voting purposes. Please come down and see us and pick up your ballot. If you have any questions about where to vote, please contact the city clerk's office, and we look forward to seeing everybody at the polls on November 7th.
And if you have any questions about who to vote for, you'll see anyone on council. April, anything from the city manager's office this evening?
Oh, I think you all covered it.
Right, and then some. Dan,
Nothing tonight,
this evening. All right, Councilman Martin.
A couple things. One, on the subject of the election, I've heard a lot in conversations, in all jest, that we've got 3 very qualified people on the ballot, and they're non-contested elections. And I get that may seem like an opportunity not to bother. But I'd really encourage you, so many people have given and continue to give so much for the right to vote. Don't waste it. It is not a waste to participate and show up. Again, I have full confidence in everyone on the ballot. They're uncontested. But just take advantage of the opportunity, because we have the opportunity. So that being said, I also want to wish everyone a happy Halloween. And then lastly, we got a football game on Friday, don't we, Chief? I believe that there may be There's a football game on Friday. I was waiting for you to say something about it. The first playoff game is 7 p.m. at Ferndale High School.
He was going to let me do that, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm so
Councilman.
sorry. I didn't know.
That's okay.
In my defense, Jim O'Donnell was here earlier from the school board. He asked me to announce something.
All right,
so,
that's all.
I'm not trying to
Go
upstage
ahead.
anybody.
I'll
And that's
reiterate.
against Warren Consolidated, right?
No, De La Salle.
Oh. Warren LaSalle. Okay, very good. Outstanding. 7 p.m. home. Come out and cheer on the local team. The mayor may remind you again in a second or two. Sorry.
No problem.
Jim asked me to say something.
Councilwoman Leaks May, anything for the good of the community this evening?
Well, I just wanted to state how much I enjoyed all the activities that happened in the past couple of days. The community concert band, the Harding Park is beautiful, and it was really nice seeing the community out and enjoying good music and enjoying our newly renovated park, and just all around it was a beautiful weekend for it. I also want to send out a couple of thank yous and just notes of appreciation to our DPW department, Lloyd in particular, because I always seem to be able to contact him and ask him about something that I've heard from the residents, and he just kind of gets right on it. And I also want to send out a thank you to the Ferndale Police Department, because I can always contact Captain Palazzolo when the residents tell me something or complain about something to me. I just kind of do that mass email to DPW and the police, and they get right on it. So my shout out is to you, and I appreciate you for what you do. So thank you.
Wonderful. Councilman Pollica.
Just want to wish everybody a happy Halloween and say how proud I am of my community that we were able to do the ceremony for the Pride flag today. Really incredible. I'm honored to be on council, to be able to be a part of this. It's history. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just wanted to concur what Councilman Pollock has said. We like to try new things here and be a leader, and I appreciate your leadership on this topic as an ally of the LGBT and supporter. I think it's pretty awesome. Also wanted to wish everybody a happy Halloween. Be safe. And I also wanted to bring up something that was just in the news today. Not that we need to take action, but it's definitely something to watch. Ever since I moved here, I've had higher car insurance rates, living closer to 8 Mile. And when I applied for auto insurance in 2004 after I moved here, our insurance company kept saying, "You live in Detroit, right?" I'm like, 48220, no, it's Ferndale. They're like, "You're in Detroit, right?" I'm like, "No, we're in Ferndale." And they're like, "Well, you're like $300 to $400 more than if you were north of 9. And finally, we have a map that shows where the insurance costs are going, or where they increase by entering suburb. And Ferndale, while not the highest of Southfield and Oak Park, Ferndale is definitely part of the higher insurance premiums that are extended. And I think, and just in coincidence, knocking doors yesterday in a neighborhood, the resident had loved what was going on in Ferndale, but he complained about the auto insurance rates to me. And I'm like, well, not sure I can do something locally about that, but I can definitely advocate at the policy level. And I think we need to take a look at what Ferndale's position could be in support of this ongoing legislation that is being tossed around right now, and where we can be supportive of the entering suburbs who are also impacted by this. So I've always said redlining across the 8 Mile border, and while not as bad in Detroit, it certainly is impacting our residents.
That map is in Cranes, by the way, if people want
Cranes, Detroit. Yes,
Yeah.
you can go to Cranes,
Thank
Detroit. And the article is titled, "Detroit Isn't the Only City with Outsized Insurance Rates," published yesterday by Mike Wilkinson and Chad Livingood, if anybody wanted to check out the article.
All right. Is that it?
Yep.
All right. I have just a few quick things. I want to thank the Lennon family and the Lennon Family Foundation. They made a donation of a brand new picnic table and a bench at Lennon Park. It's installed. It's there. It's nice. And another great feature in one of our parks. So I want to appreciate him for that. I will add on to what you said about the Ferndale Eagles, who have made the playoffs and got more points than any other school in Oakland and Macomb County. Is that right, Chief? That's right. That's partly how we got the draw that we did. With a thrilling win over Edsel Ford last Friday in the last 30 seconds, so it was very cool. So we've got a very exciting football team in Ferndale that's worked really hard for a couple of years, for some of them, to have the success that they're having. And so if there's any way that we can, I can encourage you to come out on Friday evening at 7 o'clock and root on our Ferndale Eagles. I know they'd appreciate it, and it doesn't happen that often here, so take advantage of the great football team. So go Eagles. And then finally, I neglected to thank somebody when we were talking about the parking deck. I talked about the DDA and the residents, maybe I neglected it because I've said it before, but Joe was not hired to be a parking consultant, project manager, and yet he's as fluent in it as I'm sure anyone in the business. So Joe, thank you for your leadership in guiding this project forward. It is appreciated. Thank you. And with that, right? The library. Is there any? Thank you for reminding me.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I should have made the same invitation to you as I did to the DDA. Anything going on that you want to share? Okay, put her on the spot. All right.
Way to go, relax.
All right. Yeah. Too much pressure. You're always invited to speak at any point. All right. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.